Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another PCM webcast. I'm Holly Wade, and today we will be talking about how the AirWatch Enterprise Mobility Management platform transforms IT and delivers business value to government agencies. Learn how to secure critical data and information while ensuring employees have access to the content, apps, and resources they need to do their jobs. Garrett Hicks from AirWatch by VMware is here with us remotely today. So, Garrett, I will hand it over to you.
Thanks, Holly. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Are we live right now?
Yes.
All right. Perfect. So thanks, Holly. My name is Garrett Hicks. I am the SLED sales manager for AirWatch by VMware. Today we're going to go ahead and look at balancing security and enablement amongst mobility. Through this presentation, I have just some brief slides just to give a background on AirWatch by VMware. Look at some products and use cases as well as return on investment. From there, I'll go ahead and jump into the administrative console, go through some key differentiators within the software itself, and most importantly, looking at this from the end user's experience. So I'll be jumping into my iPad that I have on hand and just showing you what this looks like from enrollment to an enterprise wipe, so the full life cycle for an end user. So just to start things off, a little bit about AirWatch. So we are the largest EMM provider today. 17,000 customers and growing, 2,000 employees, just about 30% of which are solely dedicated to research and development. And that's probably our biggest differentiator right there. That's what has allowed us to stay up to date as far as any major OS releases. And in mobility, there's on average every 2 weeks there's a new operating system, a new update. So it really takes that size and scale to be able to manage and offer that day zero support and go beyond just standard APIs as well. So go beyond the commoditized MDM and really into some beneficial applications to enable your employees while still keeping security in mind. So real quick, as far as AirWatch stands from an analyst standpoint, since the inception of the Gartner Magic Quadrant for Enterprise Mobility, AirWatch has been listed most favorably as a leader, and we're continuing to grow at the top right of the chart year after year. And all these reports are available for download from our website. So now that we're a part of VMware, the messaging is changing. It's not just about securing your mobile device. It's really about enablement across all your devices and making sure that there is one, unified experience for your end users, whether they're on a desktop, a laptop, their tablet, their smartphone, and even in vehicles. So the Internet of Things is really branching out to have its own manageable operating system, which you can, do from AirWatch as well. So we'll see a lot of that here in the future. I know it's not too big in government right now, but these solutions are already being developed, and eventually will be, a big use case within government as well. And with this story with VMware, we're really going beyond just the EMM play and into integration with virtual desktops, NSX, SocialCast, Fusion, and this is just 1.0 as far as this integration goes, so this better together story. Now, what we're trying to do here is become really set a standard for the industry. This is where the industry should go. Instead of piecemealing several different solutions together, having this all through one single umbrella so that it's one clean, crisp, unified end user experience. So as far as endpoint management, as I mentioned, mobile devices, laptops, we are platform agnostic on that end. But we also go beyond that into ruggedized devices, so your Windows embedded devices, printers and peripherals, so that could be, your handheld Zebra printers. We see that a lot in transportation, maybe transportation authorities, so maybe some rail lines that want to have remote ticketing while in the train carts. Any operating system, so just about anybody and everybody can go ahead and support iOS, but then going beyond that into Android, Google Chrome, Windows, BlackBerry, and then some. In any use case, whether these are government-issued devices, BYOD, or shared devices, we'll have you covered. And with this comprehensive solution, so going beyond, as I mentioned, just MDM, because it's no longer just about securing these devices. And while yes, security is absolutely important, the breach level index actually reported that there were 1 billion records breached in 2014 via mobile devices. 5.2 smartphones were stolen just in the U.S. alone this past year. And one of our partners, SkyCure, actually did some analytics and found that 25% of all mobile devices encounter a security threat each month. So, and that's not just coming from the device itself. That's, this is coming from applications as well. So 75% of mobile applications will actually fail a security test when tested. So these threats are increasing. They're growing at a dramatic rate, and it's important to look at layers and safety nets amongst all these different packages here. So going beyond just MDM and looking at containerization for your applitions, your email, browsing, content, and then some. And so we offer a couple different options here as far as we can go ahead and do the pure play MDM and go ahead and deploy these different features in tandem with it, or we can go ahead and just take a look at a pure workspace type approach where all we're doing is we're not managing the devices, but we're simply enabling these users with secure applications, secure DLP solutions. And that's going to be more important, from a BYOD standpoint, so that you're not tracking a device, you're not infringing on any privacy. The end user is very comfortable with this, and that you're still enabling them to have access into their resources. So I don't want to dog too much on just pure play MDM, though, as it is the root source on how you secure this device. So from requiring a PIN, preventing from rooted or jailbroken devices, and I also recommend viewing the CJIS policy online. So that's the FBI standard. It's a great resource for best practices on just minimum security on how to secure your device at the device level. And on top of that, AirWatch can 100% make these devices CJIS compliant. And beyond just security with MDM, there's also a big return on investment as far as having a streamlined approach for provisioning these devices. So we did a use case with City of South Bend, Indiana. What they found was that for every 100 devices that they're deploying out, they're saving on average about $5,000 just in deploying resources like email, applications, as well as security. So instead of having to go in manually and configure all this, they're saving about $5,000 just in man hours for every 100 devices. In terms of application management, so we can go ahead and, of course, issue out the public enterprise volume purchase applications. For security purposes, government issue phone, you need some type of application control for your internal application. So that could be leveraging our app wrapping, SDK, or app tunneling for a secure, streamlined access into your internal data. And there's a big use case as far as, this is really where the return on investment comes in. So, one of our larger customers, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, they actually are deploying out a construction application to their iPad. It allows inspectors in the field to collect data electronically, upload it to a back-end system, for quicker and easier access to the data. And when you compare that to the more old school ways of pulling this data, either filling out forms and then driving back to the office and recording that data, loading it up into a server, being able to do this all remotely, the Commonwealth actually found out that just in hours alone, they're actually saving about $11 million annually. So through these applications, absolutely, that's where you're going to see the biggest return on investment, as well as the best end user experience. It's kind of the carrot at the end of the stick to really get these users into adopting mobility and going beyond just thinking IT is here to spy on me or just to secure my device. No, they're here to help and enable and make sure that you can do your job best. So on a further note with application management, we also have our ACE program, that's Applications Configured for Enterprise. So this is an open source policy that we have on the public market for any types of application developers to go ahead and leverage. And what this allows is for you to, when you're pushing out, say, Salesforce out to a user, you can pre-configure their domain, their login information, so that the end user doesn't have to worry about any of that from their from their tablet. And that can be kind of cumbersome, especially with some smaller keys. It may demote people from being able to actually use an application if they're having to go through multiple factors of authentication. So that's just one way you can go ahead and make it easier on them. Then lastly, on application management, we have some new integrations with VMware, and that's with the Identity Manager, so formerly known as the Workspace. So what we can do here, we can actually tie this in with our application catalog for one unified experience from the end users, whether they're on their tablet, their phone, their PCs. They'll be able to go ahead and have access to all their SaaS applications, web applications, their virtual desktops, thin apps, Zen apps, as well as your native applications, your enterprise applications for that platform, and the volume purchase program if you're on iOS. But really the big benefit here is that regardless of whatever platform you're on, it's the same experience for the users. So not just by device, but by operating system as well. If you're on a Windows machine for your laptop, but then you want to go ahead and switch to an Android or iOS device, you're going to have the same type of access. And then instead of logging into multiple catalogs, the VMware portal for your virtual desktop, and then the AirWatch portal for your native resources, we found a way to go ahead and merge those together for one unified experience for the end users. And in terms of content management, so really what we're doing here is we're delivering data in a secure, encrypted fashion down to the device. We can tie into multiple content repositories. So if you're using an internal file share plus a SharePoint plus, say, OneDrive, this is an application where we can go ahead and tie into all those resources together. So we take really a Switzerland approach at this. Some great use cases around this, just one that I can think of offhand. So we have a larger county in North Carolina that's using this for their caseworkers. And what they're doing is instead of filling out these case forms in the field, they're going ahead and actually able to edit, annotate, and send back to a shared drive, a shared server, directly from the field using the content locker. So you have these editing and annotating capabilities as well as sharing amongst your peers. What these folks found, though, is that the amount of gas spent driving back and forth to the office, the amount of paper, toner costs, as well as time spent, being able to visualize all this, virtualize all this, so that the end users are just doing this all from the field and from when they're on site, not even having to go back to their car or anything like that. They're saving on average about $3 million a year. So, and that's just one use case as far as health and human services go. There's plenty of use cases here. In fact, we've built out some features specifically for public safety in terms of having a built-in camera, so that if you want to take a picture of a crime scene, an accident scene, anything like that, you can go ahead and take that photo. It's going to be locked down, secured into the content locker, so that there's no danger of this being leaked out to the press, social media, etc. And I'm going to go into all these applications on my device as well. This is just really a quick intro, so I'll show you exactly what this looks like. A few more applications here. So as far as mobile browsing management, what we can do here is really take the approach of securing access into your internet. So at a per app VPN, basically, affirming that the device, the user, and the application are, identified as accessible to have access into these resources. From there, they can go ahead and tie, without the need of a VPN license, tie into your internet, so that they'll have instantaneous access into SharePoint, anything on your internet. You also save money on the VPN licenses, so you're going to have to, issue those out in bulk, especially for all your BYOD users. And there's some great DLP solutions in here, which I'll go into during the demo. In terms of email management, so we have several approaches. We have the native experience, and we work with all different platforms as far as that goes. And then we also have our containerized approach, which is the AirWatch Inbox. Both of which we work with all the email servers that you see here. So we are completely platform agnostic as far as the email configurations go. Big benefit, though, is, of course, your end users are most likely going to, appreciate the native experience more so than anything else, as that's just the way these devices are built. However, if you're looking for one unified experience amongst all devices, that's really where the AirWatch Inbox comes in. Or if you're part of a regulated industry where you need multi-factor authentication or DLP solutions like disabling copy and paste, whitelisting or blacklisting specific URLs that you're allowed to forward out attachments to, that's where this inbox is going to come in, really for more of a secure approach. And then finally, last application here is it's a little bit of a newer one. It's our AirWatch Video. From here, you can have basically a library of videos you can set in the different categories. Great use cases here around for HR purposes. For instance, if you have, if you want to go ahead and audit a training that you need to push out, and you're required to see, make sure that everybody has viewed and accepted this training. That's where this would come in. You can pull those analytics to see, who's watched this video for how long. A great tool for enablement for any type of training resources. And last slide here. So we are very tightly integrated with the mobile ecosystem. As I mentioned, all forms of devices going to applications with our ACE program, as well as the integrations with Identity Manager now. Security, so we can integrate in with multiple mobile security platforms, as well as certificate authorities. Over 60 different external content repositories we can tie into the content locker. And then from an infrastructure standpoint, any type of network access control, and then some. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is jump into the demo. And to start that off, let me go ahead and just refresh my screen, make sure I'm not timing out here. And so what we see here, this is the administrative portal. From here, you're going to have a full dashboard view of all devices that are enrolled into your environment. So we see 1,000 currently deployed out here. You get a summary of security information, so if any are compromised, no passcode, not encrypted, and you can customize all these portlets here to see exactly what you want. You have a breakdown of platforms, and say I want to go ahead and just look at my iOS devices. I can click on this portlet here, and then just drill into specifically my iOS devices. You can go ahead and filter this out based on multiple platforms as well. So maybe I want to look at QNX, Tizen, Windows 7 devices. Kind of an odd algorithm there as far as the devices you want to look at, but just pick your pleasure here as far as the amount of filters that you'd like to go ahead and use. Now, we're looking at all devices currently enrolled into this fictitious group that we created, Worldwide Enterprises. But then you see here we have this multi-tenant structure where we can create a breakdown based on different structures here, and we can tie this in with your with your Active Directory if you'd like, tie in with the groups of the Active Directory, or this could be completely standalone. This is a big hit in government, as you can go ahead and for central IT, maybe you want to go ahead and have central IT up here at the top, and then have your various departments stored within. And so what we can do here is provision out based on these individual groups. So your Parks and Rec department is not necessarily going to have the same policies as your Public Safety department. So there's going to be multiple use cases there, and this really allows for that granular support to be able to go ahead and provision each of those devices in its own preferred manner. And right now it's set up as a master administrator, so I have full access here on the left and to all groups. But you see if I switch to Tier 1 Help Desk, then my rights have actually changed. So I'm only able to access specific groups within my organization. So say, IT is allowing additional administrators like their public safety to go ahead and have their own group within this shared environment. Public safety is only going to be able to view and manage their own devices. So from there, there's not, the departments aren't, fighting with one another as to what deployments they need to have pushed down. This is all, keeps things secure and containerized. And then going beyond that, public safety could then go ahead and delegate which features, which pieces of the console do they want to delegate out internally. So maybe they want to have somebody solely dedicated to telecom management, another for email management, and so on. You have those layers of control for role-based access. And everything here is custom brandable as well. So if you wanted to brand this for your organization, you absolutely could do so. I'm going to jump back into the console in just a bit, but what I want to do now is actually jump into the end user experience real quick. And let me make sure. It looks like my screen's frozen up here. One moment. There we go. Just have to replug that into my MacBook. So currently, my device is not enrolled into AirWatch, so it's set up to be a BYOD device, if you will. Have some personal applications on it. Have all features of iOS 9 currently enabled. No company resources right now, no applications, no access to email, calendar, contacts, anything like that. That's all going to change once I enroll. And the end user is going to be notified in a couple ways. They can be notified via either email or SMS. That email or SMS can go ahead and contain a link for them to download the AirWatch agent, which is available on the public app store as well. Once they download the agent, they're going to be able to enroll in a few different ways. So they can do an email address, they can type in the server information, or they can do a QR code. Probably the easiest way to do it, in my opinion, is the email address. So based on the domain, that's going to define what group, what environment I'm actually enrolling into. So I'm going to go ahead and enter my email address here. And then my username and password, so just my AD credentials. This does not have to be AD. If you want to have this to be, just a one-off username password, you can certainly do so. We see that a lot in libraries. They'll allow their users to check in and check out on a shared device, so not a full enrollment, but they'll check in and check out based on their library number versus their, username and password. And we also offer a SAML-based approach. So if you're using VMware Identity Manager already and you want to enroll into AirWatch, you can issue out that application within Identity Manager. Just click on AirWatch and it's going to automatically enroll you. Enter my password here. Now, very important here, we have custom T's and C's. So basically this is stating what you're going to collect, what you're not going to collect on this device. This will put the end user at ease. If you're stating that you are not collecting their personal application information, or you're not detecting their GPS, or, hey, we're only going to activate this in case of an emergency, that sort of thing, that's all going to be based in this policy here. On top of that, we also have a privacy first initiative. We're issuing out an application that actually shows the user, if you'd like to deploy this to them, what you're actually collecting and what you're not collecting, so that they can log in at their leisure at any time. So if there's a change in policy, they'll be notified and see exactly what they're doing. Or what IT is doing is, there's a lot of concern amongst end users as to, are they simply just watching me, right? So this will put them at ease to really say, hey, all IT is doing right here is securing this, this, and this, and issuing out these specific features. So once they hit accept here, though, you're going to receive a timestamp notification and report that you can save into the console, so that'll actually automatically be saved for you. So you can address that at any time for any type of legal HR purposes. All right, now to enroll, just going to follow the prompts here. Install a couple times. And done. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to be redirected into the AirWatch application, or the AirWatch agent, excuse me. Just checking the status right now to make sure that I am compliant before enrolling. So if I'm non-compliant for whatever reason, it'll actually block me from being able to enroll. So that could be if my device is rooted or jailbroken, you want to deny access to your resources, you could certainly do so. I already have some applications pushing out to my device. Now being required to punch in a passcode. And so that's going to be very important for CJIS compliance, just to make sure that you're meeting all the minimum passcode requirements for the device. Now the applications will take priority, as you can see, so it keeps knocking out the passcode requirement, but we'll get back to that once the app installation notifications are finished. So within this agent as well, you can go ahead and actually send messages to your end users. So if it's specifically for mobility purposes, and it's, hey, we need for you to disable this application, or just whatever kind of troubleshooting message you'd like to send them, you can go ahead and send it directly in here. That's by all means not the only way to send a message. You can also, from the console, send an email, an SMS, or push notification as well. But then users can be able to pull up some pretty nifty information on their device as well. So they can go ahead and pull up their network usage information, their telecom information. So from an expense management standpoint, they can check the status of where they actually are. I'll show you in the console as well that you can go ahead and configure to have certain policies or restrictions as far as telecom usage to prevent any bill shock. Pulling away now, so we see this the passcode requirement pushing out. And you can control the minimum length on this if you want to be a simple value, alphanumeric, expire for a certain amount of days, or say a certain amount of failed tests before the device gets erased. We have multiple applications that have just pushed out to my device as well. So while we push some out, automatically to the device, we also can give the end users access into your own enterprise app store. So we bring out the app catalog. You can brand it however you like, though. Upon logging in, so this is where you're going to be able to tie in with the VMware Identity Manager with the AirWatch application catalog. So I'm no longer just having access into my internal pre-purchased or native applications, but going beyond that into your 10 applications, your web applications as well, SaaS applications, Zen applications, as well as virtual desktops. So from an end user's experience, being able to access, through the VDI through this, that's a very powerful tool to make sure they're not having to log into multiple portals, but they can just go ahead and from here have a streamlined approach. Just for instance, just to show you what this looks like, I'm going to download BlueJeans to show you what the single sign-on looks like on some external applications. But the big use case there is that, what we're doing with the single sign-on, your end users, you think about how many applications you're opening and closing throughout the day. To be forced to log in and out of every single one of those, very cumbersome, becomes a little bit non-productive, and maybe even dangerous if they're in, a job site where they really need to focus in. So instead, what they can go ahead and do is with a single sign-on, all they need to do is actually just open up the application. So if I go into the browser here, we see the single sign-on, this circling right here, this thinking is just this initial single sign-on taking place. And voila, now I have access into the secure browser. So as I was mentioning, you can go ahead and have access into your internal sites, but this is also a great tool as far as, from a security or restriction standpoint. So there's a couple different use cases here. You can use this as a tool for enablement, where you're simply, allowing your users to have access into the internet. And in that case, I would suggest deploying this in tandem with something like Safari or the native browser. However, if you're looking at this for more so a restrictive standpoint, then you could go ahead and disable the native browser and leverage this as the sole source for your browsing. So that way, if you want to go ahead and say, restrict Facebook, for example, you can go ahead and set those, set that up so that, if a user tries to go to the sites, they're automatically blocked. And we can do that either with an internal web filter that we have built into the browser, or we can tie in with your existing web filters that you have. So if you have a WebSense or anything like that, any type of on-premise web filter as well, we will work with. So, just so you don't have to completely, reinvent the wheel there. As well as if you want to go ahead and create, a splash page, the opening page for your end users, create bookmarks, really just to streamline their experience so that they're not having to manually configure where they need to go for their business purpose. Everything is going to be, can be completely configured for them so they have access to all resources and they're all bookmarked prior to logging in. And just to show you an example of what SharePoint, the tying into the internet, click on SharePoint here and have instantaneous access into the SharePoint environment. One last thing, and this is purely based on policy, you can enable or disable this. You could track the user's browsing history as well. I don't see it deployed for that purpose very often, but that is also a capability if you're looking for this to be more of a restrictive approach. So it looks like all our other applications have installed here. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into our secure content locker. So this is 256-bit encrypted, FIPS 140.2 compliance. We developed this actually for United Airlines back in 2011 to replace their flight books, their paper flight manifests. So they were carrying these, these heavy 200-page documented flight manifests each day, and we were able to eliminate all that paper. And the use cases are staying amongst all organizations now, all different verticals. So as I mentioned, one, the caseworkers, for Mecklenburg County, North Carolina, but also, just to show you from the product standpoint, when we log in here, I'm going to be able to see multiple repositories. So whether it's AirWatch content that you're issuing out straight from the console, or we can tie in with your corporate SharePoint, Google Drive, 365, and then some. So whatever you'd like, and we'll have folders, subfolders push out to the end users. So now I can go ahead and if I want to work on a specific file, that it's change template here, I can go ahead and make some edit and annotations, and that's completely up to you on whether or not you want to allow this, right? So I can go in here and make any kind of edits that I like, and then send that back to the shared drive, or save it personally for my own personal use. So if it's like a shared document you want all the users to have out in the field, you can do so. So real-time true editing with anything with and concerns with Office, and then editing and annotation capabilities with the PDF. So, and once again, it's completely up to you as the administrator on whether or not you want to allow those capabilities, and it can be based on a file, a folder, a user, a group, on whether or not you want to allow that type of stuff. And then I can also go in here, from a user standpoint, view all content, open multiple pieces of content at one time, see what new content, so if you're pushing anything out that's new and you want that to kind of be on the end user's radar, you can go ahead and do so. Also, you see this red exclamation mark at the top. So that's going to be for any important information that you want to go ahead and issue out to the users, maybe an important training manual that you want to go ahead and have out to the users. And you can also have this documented on whether or not they actually went through and read this. Additionally, then users have their own personal content. So great benefit here. This is what's going to allow them to, say for instance, I have my own files and forms that I need to leverage out in the field. I can go ahead and open those from here and then leverage those out. Or maybe I want to go ahead and create a new Office document. They're not actually going to need Microsoft Office for their iPad. Instead, those features, these tools are built into here, so there's no license required for that. They can go ahead and create these and then save it back to their device or into the content locker, which they can then have unified access to, both from the content locker on the device as well as their self-service portal, which I'll go into in a bit, and then SocialCast, which is basically the social networking, the business-grade social networking site that VMware has created. So we have some integrations there as well. And to those on the line, I'd like to keep this open forum. Feel free to interrupt if there's any questions that you'd like to go ahead and ask at this time. We're just about wrapping up on the device side of things. All right. So going into the next application, so this is just a look at what does this single sign-on look like for something external from AirWatch? So I've shown the single sign-on from these provisioned out AirWatch applications. But what about a public web app? So I'm logging into BlueJeans here, and you see already AirWatch has taken over and is configuring the single sign-on. And there you go. So now I am configured as John Doe within this BlueJeans application and have instantaneous access. So any application, any web application that supports SAML-based authentication, we can go ahead and set up to configure this. And then just one last note on the device side of things. So you see FaceTime, photo booth, camera. Those features have now been removed. We can also even disable the App Store. So people often ask about whitelisting, blacklisting. Absolutely, we can go ahead and do this on iOS, Android, Windows devices. You name the platform, we can go ahead and configure that. So, and then a great new update to with iOS 9, you can actually control OS updates as well. All right. So I'm going to jump back into the console, but just want to take a break for about 30 seconds here and open up the floor. Any questions on the device side of things?
Not just yet, but we'll give it some time to see if anyone has any.
Excellent. All right, so jumping into the console here. So now that my device is enrolled, and actually before I go into that, let me go into the end user's console. So the end users are going to have access into their own self-service portal. And this is a big benefit here. So it takes some, if you want to allow some administrative features to, not just be in IT's hands, but into the end user's hands as well. Say, for instance, device is lost or stolen on a Friday or Saturday. Odds are the end user is not going to reach out to their IT help desk on a Saturday night and say, hey, I've lost my device, or hey, I'm locked out of my device, can you help me out? And statistics that I hear, and they seem so high that I'm not even sure if I believe them, but supposedly 80% of trouble tickets are based on just login issues. So this really clears that up. So an end user can go ahead and say they're locked out of their device, they can go ahead and clear their passcode. And to log in here, all they need is their AD credentials. So as long as they can remember that, they're all set. Or if they're leveraging the identity manager, they can just have instantaneous access into this and not even type anything in. Or say they know where their device is, but they left it on a public bench somewhere. They want to make sure it's locked down. They can go ahead and remotely lock it. Or if device is ever, God forbid, lost or stolen, which odds are over 75% of devices that are lost or stolen on a Friday or Saturday. So this allows for them to go ahead and take matters in their own hands, either locate the device or do an enterprise wipe to that device as well. And this can be for multiple devices. So you see I also have, my iPhone in here as well. So I have multiple devices enrolled into this environment. And we do allow role-based access control on this. So if you want to go ahead and, only enable certain features for your end users, but maybe, you don't want to give too much power to them, you can choose exactly which features you want to enable for these end users. All right, now going back from the admin side of things. So now that my device is enrolled, I'm going to go ahead and do a global lookup. Just type in GHIX and find my iPad over here and get a summary of security information. So we see it's managed. If I find my iPhone is enabled, I have activation lock enabled, which you can control. You can see if there's any compliance policies that have been broken, which they're not. What profiles have been installed, so that'll be for like Wi-Fi, VPN, email, restrictions. And you see here all the profiles, the ones with the green check marks are the ones that we pushed out. These gray hash ones, those are going to be for like optional profiles that you want to allow for the end users to either enable from their self-service portal or you want to enable from a manual standpoint. You can see what applications have been installed to this device. So very important here, though, is that you can go ahead and set this up to see both government applications, government-issued applications, as well as personal applications. Now, we do have privacy controls to where if you want to go ahead and set this up to where you can only see the government-issued applications, and protect the end users, for instance, if they have a religious-affiliated application or health-affiliated application, there's a potential risk there where if somebody from IT says, hey, was just looking at, checking out some things on your device, saw that you have a diabetes application. My son actually has diabetes. That's a major HR violation there. That's a breach of privacy. So this would allow our security or privacy settings would allow for you to go ahead and just surpass any of those concerns around privacy in this console. So that can be for location, that can be for applications, it can be for multiple features throughout the device. You can see what content's been installed and view the history there. So if you're pushing out a training, you want to know who's taking it seriously. You can see all this on a macro level as well. I'm just zooming in on my personal device. Location, so you can see where device was last seen. And actually really zoom in there to see, which building. So it goes all the way down to, here's our corporate headquarters for AirWatch. So you can actually zoom in and see truly where that device is located. Some user information and then device information as well. And that's great for troubleshooting purposes. If you want to see, the amount of battery that's left, or someone saying, hey, I can't download this particular file, and you look and you see that you can see what their data connection actually looks like. So maybe they're just in a poor service area. And then from also from a troubleshooting standpoint, for iOS and Android devices, if you want to allow remote view, and for Android even and Windows devices, remote control, you can enable that capability with the end user's acceptance. So a lot of nifty features there. Going to the profiles, so once again, this is where you're going to be able to more so create restrictions as well as enable native features on this device. So here are the platforms that we support from a mobility standpoint, as well as from a desktop standpoint. Support anything and everything on Mac OS, and then going into Windows 10, they've opened up more APIs than we've seen for any mobile device. So for these Windows 10 devices, the CEO of Windows actually came out and said that the legacy ways of managing your desktops, your laptops, are no more. They're promoting, they've endorsed EMM is the new way to manage these devices. It's more cost effective, something that Gartner's backed as well. So for time's sake, I won't go into the weeds too much on the desktop side of things, but just know that there are major capabilities there as well. So we'll keep it clean and stick with iOS and creating a profile. So here we'll go ahead and you'll be able to decide how you want this to be deployed. So basically we have what we call smart groups. And so here it's really tying all pieces together. So you can do this, leverage groups within your organization in this multi-tenant structure, or you can leverage user groups, which are basically one-off groups that you can create. Say, hey, these 5 users are in this particular group, or based on AD attributes, we're going to allow these set of users into this particular group. So just an additional layer of granularity there. You can also define based on ownership, platform, model, operating system, and then, of course, additions and exceptions based on users and devices. From there, once you create that group, you get a summary of all the devices that are going to be enabled for the specific policy. And you create geofencing, time-based schedules. But going in here, so I'm not going to go into all of these, but just a few big ones. So passcode, as I mentioned, you can configure the minimum length. If you want to auto-lock, if there's a certain amount of minutes, a number of failed attempts before the device gets erased. Restrictions. These operating systems, these platforms have been great about really enabling IT administrators to either enable or disable just about any feature on that device. Also for ease of provisioning, Wi-Fi, VPN, email can all be configured from the console here. And then you see on the left just multiple categories that we can go ahead and set up and configure. So from a restriction standpoint, once again, I'd recommend check out the CJIS policy online. That's CJIS. The mobility section really goes over some great highlights on what they expect for minimum security policies on a mobile device, where are the potential breaches of security, and then in the appendix it really goes in deeper into each of those categories. Now, from a security standpoint, this is really the most important piece, and that's going to be our compliance engine. So here you can have multiple rules that you can create. So say a device is it's not encrypted, if it is not up to date on a particular OS version, or maybe there's no passcode present, device is rooted or jailbroken, et cetera, et cetera. So multiple rules there. You can go ahead and take action. So maybe the first thing you want to do, notify the end users. CC yourself or the help desk so you instantaneously know when somebody breaks some type of compliance. From there, you can go ahead and after a certain amount of minutes, hours, days, if you want to go ahead and have elevated escalations here. So you could do another notification. You could remove all the profiles from the device, so that way the device is still enrolled, it's still manageable, you can still track it, it's still secured, but that end user is not going to have any resources until they fall back into compliance. Now, another interesting use case that we learned, and this is from Walmart, did a very extensive study on what was the best way to get devices into compliance. And it wasn't necessarily restricting resources. It wasn't unenrolling their device. Instead, it was actually creating an install profile, so an install compliance profile. What they did is they took the PIN from a 4-digit simple passcode to a 12-digit complex character password to enter their device. Then that password would be stuck there until that device got back into compliance. So you're not taking away any productivity enhancing resources from that device, But at the same time, you can be rest assured that that end user is going to be annoyed enough to where they're going to jump right back into compliance as soon as possible, so they don't have to enter in 12 different characters. And then, if all else fails, if you want to go ahead and do a command, to go ahead and enterprise wipe the device, you can certainly do so. So multiple commands here. I won't jump into all those for time's sake. Applications. So here's where you can install your internal, public, pre-purchase applications as well as web apps. So we'll install, particular applications here, say on the App Store, say Weather Channel. So just as if you're actually on the individual App Store, you can select which application you want to push out. And then you can choose deployment, whether you want this to be on demand and show up in the application catalog so the users can download at their leisure and you're not forcing 1,000 different applications out on their device. Or you can make it automatic so that, for those crucial applications that you make sure that those are shown on their desktop. And then for any of those applications that are supporting our ACE program, you can go ahead and actually set up different configurations to configure those for the end users themselves. On your internal applications, so you can pull up app logs, analytics, if there's any type of, crash logs for your application. So if you're pushing out an internal app and you really want to optimize it for the next version, you can get all those logs from this console here so you can, when the next version comes out, you know where the errors are and where to fix them. And then here's the application settings. This is where you're going to go ahead and have, additional security, whether that's, compromised actions as far as for your application. So if a device is compromised, you disable a particular feature within an application. Geofencing, so maybe only if a device is within a secure perimeter, do you then have access into some resources within that app. There are multiple features there, and we can, once again, we can leverage the SDK where we inject code within that application, so that's really going to be for apps in development. Or we can leverage our app wrapping tool for apps that have already been deployed. But the best thing to do is that, if there is an app that's supporting our ACE program, to go ahead and leverage that natively and configure via our ACE program. Into content, so here's where you can go ahead and see, the top files as, from an engagement standpoint. This is where you tie into multiple repositories here. Email, so here you'll be able to see who all is attempting to access your mobile email. And this is a major piece of security information here. So having access and visibility into seeing not just devices enrolled, but those non-enrolled devices that are trying to access your mobile email. And you'll see the status on whether they're allowed or whether they're blocked. You can drill into the blocked ones and see exactly why. So if I go into blocked here, you can drill in and actually see the purpose on why they've actually been denied access. And those are all going to come from these compliance policies here. So you can say, okay, only managed devices by AirWatch have access to our mobile email. That way you prevent from any rogue users from being able to go ahead and just put the correct email information and then have access, right? Correct domain information and then just jump right in. So you can say only managed devices by AirWatch, or have a specific list of users, devices, mail clients even. So if you want to only enable the AirWatch inbox or a third-party application for email browsing, you can do so. Then taking this step further, if the device is ever rooted, jailbroken, not encrypted, or doesn't meet the minimum specs from a model operating system standpoint, you can go ahead and allow or deny access. So some major visibility there. Now, what about, the next thing is, bill shock, right? So I know a lot of government has these unlimited plans, but for those who don't, you can go ahead and we can integrate in with your telecom expense billing system, basically, or your telecom plans, so that if you want to go ahead and you can upload these plans and basically see how these devices fall within that plan. How many minutes are they utilizing? And if they hit a certain threshold, either notifying them, disabling a certain feature. A very important feature, I think, is disabling international roaming, right? So from a user standpoint, maybe they're taking a trip to Mexico, they forget to turn off their email or their cellular network, and their email could be automatically pulling while they're there and not even know it. So instead of getting a 200 surprise bill when they come back, you can go ahead and disable that feature or if it's or disable email if they see that they are doing some kind of international roaming. So a couple of other important features I just wanted to jump into. I harped on this a little bit, but from a privacy standpoint, so this basically states the information you're going to collect, what you're going to display, and or the information that you're simply just going to collect and not display, and what you're not going to collect. And you can define this based on groups within your organization, as well as based on the ownership of your device. So, of course, for a government-owned device, there's going to be less sensitivity on, location services or applications. But for an employee-owned, you might be a little bit more sensitive to that. And so that can be for GPS, telecom, personal applications, and then commands as well. So, you don't want to do a full wipe, a full reset to a device that's personally owned, as there could be some personal pictures there. Could be a potential lawsuit if you delete all that. So instead, you want to just enable an enterprise wipe. So you see we've whited out here the actual capability for a full wipe, or maybe remote control on a BYOD device, etc. Lastly, tying all this together, so we have the AirWatch Hub, which basically breaks down, summary of everything we've just gone over in one single page, from devices to compliance policies, profiles, which have been enabled, which are, maybe the optional ones that you see what their utilization is, the top applications being installed on your devices, top content being downloaded, so you can see some trends there, policy violations, see what the top policy violations are to see if, you need to change anything within your policy that may be restrictive, or maybe send out a memo on, hey, employees, we're seeing this as a frequent offense, please cut that back, whatever. And then certificates as well, what certificates are expiring in the next few days, months, or year even, so that you can have visibility and control into that. Reporting engine, so we're consistently being recognized from Gartner as having the most robust reporting engine in the industry. So we have multiple categories here, over 100 pre-canned reports. You can also create custom reports. So say you want to go ahead and pull device inventory. And this can be not just for enrolled devices, but you can go ahead and input, things such as air cards in here as well, flip phones, whatever you'd like, so that if you want to have this all stored in one single source. Now, all the smartphones, anything that is able to be enrolled, you can go ahead and automatically track that type of inventory. But for those other features, you can tie those in just by manually entering those into the console as well. Event logs, so we can pull over 450 different actions on the device, as well as in the console. There's thousands that we can go ahead and track. But basically here, if you're issuing something out to a user, maybe there's some kind of error and you want to see exactly what's happened, this is where that device log is going to come into place. Shows those commands to the device's response, and the end user's interaction. And so you can sort by severity, category, module here, console events as well. Somebody loses all their resources, you try to, kind of trickle down and see, all right, what really caused this? You can go ahead and sort by severity and see, okay, well, there's a critical action that took place where we deleted such and such user's device. And we can tie all this in with your systems event management tools as well. So if you want to export this data to tie into multiple resources, you can do so for better analytics. Now, going back to my device, just a few other commands that we can go ahead and push out. So I just wanted to go over these. So, of course, we can go ahead and remotely lock, configure single sign-on. Most importantly, though, is, I showed the tracking, but going into an enterprise wipe. So say this device does get in the wrong hands, what do we do next? So we can go ahead and do a device wipe here. Put in my PIN. You can also prevent re-enrollment, say if an employee retires from the organization. And now logging in to my device, you see my applications are already being removed. If I scroll to the left, FaceTime, photo booth, camera, those features have been enabled here. So all restrictions have been lifted from this device. However, I still have access into my personal applications, personal information, pictures, photos, etc. So really completely restored back to its original state. And that's the full life cycle right there for a mobile device, folks. So that said, I'd like to go ahead and open up the floor to any questions. Holly, has anybody posted any questions?
Great, thank you, Garrett. We don't have any questions at this time, but if anyone has questions on today's topic, please leave a comment or feel free to call your PCM executive.
And and one last thing here, I wanted to share my contact info with everybody. So if you'd like a personal follow-up on anything as well, within what you've seen in the demonstration, as Holly mentioned, reach out to the PCM team, as well if you'd like to reach out to me with any kind of technical questions, I'd like to set up any follow-up demonstrations, be happy to do so. Once again, my name is Garrett Hicks, VMware Sled Manager, phone number and email address listed below.
Great, thank you. So one more big thank you to Garrett Hicks from AirWatch by VMware for joining us, and thanks to you all for watching. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.